Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today here on Everyday Lutheran. In today's Bible study, our focus is on Romans chapter 12. In chapter 12, Paul continues to highlight the purpose of the law and why it is given to us, how it gives us humility and points us to the need of God within our own life, that we may be transformed and alter the ways in which we want to live our lives for the ways that God is calling us to actually live our life. Now, Paul is helping the Jews and the Gentiles understand the work that God has been doing in the world, not in their lifetime, but throughout all of time. So now we leave behind our old ways of thinking and doing to take up the work that God is calling us to do, so that we are not living our lives for what the world would have us do, that our worth would not be found in our earthly job or the amount of money that's in our bank accounts or how many people like us. Rather, we should focus on God's will. Now, this leads us to a common understanding that we should be humble and not outspoken. However, Paul is not saying that we should be soft-spoken, but rather, what is it we are to proclaim, to be known for in our lives? And when others think about us, they may know God is working through us. Now think for a moment. Who in your life is doing this? Have you ever talked to them about it? Perhaps they could be your mentor and help you in your faith journey. Paul then goes on to talk about how it is we should regard one another, thinking rather than we are all part of the same body. When we think about our body, there are certain parts that we value. If we did not have a heart that would beat and pass blood, then we would not survive. In the same concept, if we did not have our brain, then we would not be able to function in many aspects of our lives. However, Paul is reminding us that each part of our body is important with its function. Without a part, then we would feel lacking in some capacity. In the same light, we too should not be the sole and only one who can do all things. We must regard one another as being a great asset, a blessing which God has created each and every one of us to be for the whole of the community, for the whole body, for the whole work that we are striving for. We can learn so much from one another if we but take the time to honor one another. Paul goes on to highlight the ways in which we work together as a community of faith. He first lists prophecy. This is a role which we often regard as, only a few because of the Old Testament. However, even people today are able to prophesy in reminding us that we are not following God's will, that we are striving for our own sake and purpose rather than focused on what God is calling us to do and be in our lives. Now, it's no coincidence that we do not regard this as needed, because we often rebel from those voices. However, like the Ten Commandments and the law itself, we are still in need of it. But we prefer that it would not make us feel as guilty or that we're not doing it, because we have not been doing it. The next gift is ministry. Now for this we speak, more of serving. This is the work that we are called to do to help one another. Now this is where we sometimes struggle with our own pride. There are going to be times in our lives when we absolutely need help, but we prefer to be the one who is serving. Now, there's nothing wrong with accepting help. In fact, this is an opportunity for us to strengthen our own community and fellowship with one another. The next gift is teaching. Now, this is something that we all need no matter what age or what piece of paper or class we have finished, because, we always have something that we need to learn. At the same time, one of the best ways for us to learn is to teach someone else. Once we are able to teach someone else, that means that we can now think of the application of the lesson, going from paper to life, to connection to other lessons. Only by teaching can we learn this. The next one that Paul talks about is an exhorter. Now, this is a person whom we do not speak of, and oftentimes we do not strive to be this, but rather the community bestows the honor. This is referred to as the honored one, a spiritual father. In some congregations, this is thought to be the pastor, the hired spiritual leader. However, this is not always correct. Oftentimes, there's a pillar, family, or person whom people look to for guidance because of their relationship with others and their experience in life. Now, more often than not, this person or people is an older person whom people have trusted and loved by being in community together. This person or people often share what it is they are thinking and living out what it is they say in the world. The next is giver. This is one who is often celebrated and associated with the word stewardship. However, this is not the correct connection. This is a person who is able to share their wealth for the betterment of the community in such a way that the community can grow and not honor the individual. This is a person who gives of their own wealth, but teaches others how to build their own wealth. This is a person who does not store up, but recognizes that God is the one who has blessed them. So they want to give to the community that has blessed them as well. In the literature of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, we have Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, this character highlights the exact opposite of the giver until his heart is opened and his life is transformed. The next aspect is leader. Now, this is one who guides and yet is still the head of the group. Paul is giving us an understanding that the spiritual gift is not one of dominion or power, but one of respect and care. The person who holds this position recognizes that they are given power, but use it in such a way that they are serving the people. The leader is working with others and making things happen by communicating, caring, and supporting the people in such a way that the person is able to grow and feel that they are a valued member of this very community. Now think of a person who has this gift, whom you may regard as a leader. Do they have these qualities? Well, the last one is compassion. Paul highlights this as perhaps the most important and one in which we are all able to live out. This is shared in so many different ways, depending on that person and situation that you may find yourself in. You could go visit a sick person, someone who's grieving, or someone who's in prison. You could care for the traveler or someone who looks very different than you are. This is perhaps best summarized in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Next, starting in verse 9, Paul begins to state clearly what a Christian community should be like. Now, much like the Ten Commandments, a person may read through these verses and ask, how can a person do all of these things? The simple answer is, they cannot. This is why we are placed in a community. This is why we work and strive with others to support and care for one another. This is the reason that we all have different gifts and abilities. We are not meant to do this all on our own, to be the perfect person. Rather, Paul is calling us to be in this community that God has gathered together through the Holy Spirit. These are things that we are to help one another do. Now, as good human creatures, we will begin to take this individual words and much like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, we want to tear it apart. Where's the loophole? The way in which we are able to do what it is we want. What it is we can agree to get away with. Well, this is another reason that we have so many different denominations in Christian faith. Even a non-denominational congregation shall struggle with some aspect. Now, I tell you this to highlight the need for all communities to keep their focus on God, His work through the Holy Spirit. Even Paul had great spiritual leaders who he did not agree with. Even Jesus, at a very young age, went and taught great and wise spiritual men in the temple in Jerusalem. So be aware of the ways in which the Holy Spirit is teaching you. And be open to the love that God is sharing with you and you are able to share with others. Well, thank you so much for joining me today here on Everyday Lutherans. Join us next time as we continue our study in the book of Romans, focusing on chapters 13 through 15, governing authorities' love and conduct.